Hello, everyone. Sorry for the long hiatus. I've been focusing on life, and plus, things have been getting in the way. And I'm not gonna lie, my motivation to make videos is a bit hit or miss due to my ADHD. Okay, this is kind of how my brain works. I get really focused on one thing, but then suddenly I can be thinking about a whole different thing and doing a whole different thing. I stopped making videos because, well, I wasn't motivated in it, and I was just living life. Now I'm gonna try and start getting back into it. Sorry for the break or some. I guess you could call it that. Anyway, please enjoy the video. This is about the Kaiser Friedrich III class battleships. Enjoy! Hello everyone. Today we will discuss some really cool ships from long ago. The Kaiser Friedrich III class battleships. Germany constructed 5 of these formidable ships in the late 1890s. These represented a significant movement for the German Navy. They aspired to match the strength of the British Royal Navy, which was exceptionally powerful at the time. Building these ships demonstrated to everyone that Germany was serious about becoming a significant naval power. These ships were named Kaiser Friedrich III, Kaiser Wilhelm II, Kaiser Karl der Grosse, Kaiser Barbarossa, and Kaiser Wilhelm der Grosse. Try saying those names 5 times fast. Those ships were designed to be the most formidable ships ever. They were larger and armed with more guns than any German warship that had come before them. Many countries, particularly Britain, were constructing larger and more advanced navies, and Germany aimed to keep pace. The Kaiser Friedrich III class was Germany's way of saying, "Hey, we're here. We are a force to be reckoned with." Chapter 2. The Design. In the early 1890s, the German Navy sought funding from the Reichstag to replace the aging ironclad Preston, but parliamentary resistance delayed the appropriation until 1894 and 1895 budget year. Design studies for the new ship started in June 1891. Sorry. At Kaiser Wilhelm II's request, and significant changes from the previous Brandenburg-class design were swiftly determined. The limitations of the fleet's infrastructure, particularly the dry docks and other harbor facilities, along with the Kaiser Wilhelm Canal, which was under construction at the time, was constrained the size of the new ship. If a heavier secondary battery were incorporated, the center turret used on the Brandenburgs would have to be sacrificed to keep the new ship within the displacement limit. 5 distinct design sketches were created. The first 4 incorporated a secondary armament of 10 10.5 centimeter guns and 8 8.8 centimeter guns, while the 5th replaced the 8.5 centimeter guns with 8 15 centimeter guns. All 5 variants were equipped with a main armament of 4 28 centimeter guns. Wilhelm II submitted his proposal, but it was plagued by significant stability issues and was not a viable option. Work on the design of the ships continued while the Navy sought funding from the Reichstag, which was finally approved in March 1894. This put pressure on the design staff to finish their work so that construction could begin. By May, the design staff produced Sketch 16, which discarded the traditional 2-gun turret which used by most navies in favor of 4 single-gun turrets arranged in a long-range pattern found on contemporary British battleships like Barbette. It's our French name. lozenge. I think that would be the gun arrangement that puts the guns in a like in a in a row or something. I don't know. The wing turrets could be adjusted to 21 centimeters if permitted. All four guns were to be 28 centimeters, but there was an option to reduce. The secondary battery was to consist of 16 10.5 centimeter guns, with at least some in twin turrets. However, over the following months, it was increased to 15 centimeter guns, as it was accepted view at the time that secondary guns would inflict the most damage in a close range fight. This view, which advocated the so-called Hail of Fire principle, was seemingly validated by the Japanese cruiser's victory over a more heavily armed Chinese fleet at the Battle of Yalu later in 1894. The smaller, faster firing guns aimed to inflict serious damage on the superstructures of enemy battleships and demoralize the crew. During the design process, the commander of the maneuver squadron, Hans von Kostler, suggested disregarding the 28 centimeter guns in favor of 24 centimeter guns, as they could be fired 2.5 times faster than the larger guns and were significantly powerful to penetrate heavy armor at close battle ranges envisioned at the time. Kaiser persuaded Wilhelm II to overrule the Naval High Command, which wanted to keep the heavier guns. This decision established a trend in the German naval construction for the following 2 decades, favoring lighter, faster firing guns over larger, more powerful alternatives. Though the decision was criticized at the time because 24 centimeter guns was smaller and therefore weaker than the 28 centimeters. The larger gun offered little substantial advantage at close range, and the greater rate of fire allowed it to produce a heavier broadside over time. In August 1894, the Navy decided on a 11,000 metric ton ship equipped with 4 24 centimeter guns and 15 centimeter guns. The decision was a gamble, as Krupp had never been designed on a 24 centimeter gun. If the test failed, the ship would not have a main battery gun, as its turrets could not be reworked to accommodate the 28 centimeter gun. The advent of Krupp's cemented armor allowed for significant weight savings. It proved far more effective than conventional Krupp armor, allowing for reduced armor use to attain the same level of protection. They retained the same armor layout of the Brandenburgs, although the weight savings would be allowed the adoption of a more comprehensive layout used in the subsequent Welsbech class. The propulsion system was enhanced by adopting water tube boilers and reorganized to include a third propeller shaft, which became standard for German capital ships. The Navy was concerned about the reliability of the water tube Thornycraft boilers, so the first vessel, Kaiser Friedrich III, was completed with only 4 new types, while the remaining 8 were older fire tube boilers. After construction of the first vessel began, the next member of the class was authorized for the 1896 and 1897 program during the intervening two years. Consideration was given to redesigning the second ship to match foreign developments, which most significantly, the adoption of the The 30.5 centimeter guns, like those on the British Majestic class battleship, the change would have necessitated halving the main battery and removing 4 of the 15 centimeter guns to offset the weight of the larger guns. Additionally, it would have left Kaiser Friedrich III without counterparts, complicating tactical control. The sacrifices were considered too severe. So the decision was made to proceed with the 24 centimeter gun, as successful proof firing of the new weapon had already been completed. Chapter 3: Powerful ships with the latest technology. These Kaiser Friedrich III class battleships were packed with cool new technology. Alright. General characteristics and machinery. The Kaiser Friedrich III class measured 120.9 centimeters in length at the waterline and 125.3 centimeters long overall. They had a beam of 20.4 meters and a draft of 7.89 centimeters at the bow and 8.25 meters at the stern. The ships typically displaced 11,097 tons, increasing to 11,785 metric tons at full load. The ship's steel hulls had transverse and longhexagonal frame construction. The hull comprised 12 watertight compartments and had a double bottom that covered 70% of its surface. Kaiser Friedrich III was fitted with a tall military foremast and a pole mainmast. The other 4 vessels were equipped with short military masts, 4 of each for each of their masts. In 1901, the foremast of the Kaiser Friedrich III was shortened. Both Kaiser Friedrich III and Kaiser Wilhelm II, intended to serve as flagships, were completed with large bridges. The former featured 2-story bridge, while the latter had a single-story bridge. The remaining 3 vessels received smaller open bridges. The German Navy considered them to have excellent seakeeping. They had a tight turning radius and were highly responsive. The ships rolled up to 15 degrees and had a roll period of 12 seconds. They experienced only minor speed loss in heavy seas, but up to 40% when rudder is hard over. Their metacentric heights range from 0.917 meters to 1.18 meters. The ships carried several smaller boats, including 2 picket boats, 2 launches, 1 pinnace, 2 cutters, 2 yawls, and 2 dinghies. The crew consisted of 39 officers and 612 enlisted men. When serving as a squadron flagship, the ship's crew was augmented by an additional 12 officers and between 51 and 63 enlisted men. The Kaiser Friedrich III class battleships were powered by 3-cylinder vertical triple expansion steam engines that drove 3 screws. Kaiser Friedrich III, Kaiser Barbarossa, and Kaiser Wilhelm der Grosse were equipped with 3-bladed screws, each with a diameter of 4.5 meters. Kaiser Karl der Grosse and Kaiser Wilhelm II were equipped with 2 3-bladed screws on the outer shafts and a 4.2 meter diameter 4-bladed screw on the center shaft. The ships were equipped with different boiler arrangements due to concerns among the Naval High Command regarding the reliability and the new water tube boilers. The Kaiser Wilhelm II had an arrangement similar to Kaiser Friedrich III. However, the Thornycroft boilers were replaced by marine-type fire tube boilers. Kaiser Wilhelm der Grosse and Kaiser Karl der Grosse were equipped with 4 marine and 6 cylindrical fire tube boilers, while Kaiser Barbarossa had 4 Thornycraft boilers and 6 cylindrical fire tube boilers. All of the ship's boilers were directed into 2 funnels, but Kaiser Friedrich III and Kaiser Wilhelm II featured thinner aft funnels, while the funnels of the other 3 ships were identical. The power plants were rated at 13,000 metric horsepower, but during trials they could generate as much as 13,950 metric horsepower. This achieved a maximum speed of 17.5 knots. The ships carried 650 metric tons of coal. However, the use of additional spaces within the ships increased fuel capacity to 1,070 metric tons. This offered a maximum range of 3,420 nautical miles at a cruising speed of 10 knots. Electrical power was supplied by 5 320 kilowatt 74 volt generators in Kaiser Friedrich III and Kaiser Wilhelm II, along with 4 240 kilowatt 74 volt generators in the other 3 ships. The primary armament comprised of a battery of 4 24cm SKL-40 guns, mounted in twin gun turrets, with one situated fore and the other aft of the central superstructure. The guns were mounted in hydraulically operated DRH-LC-98 turrets, which allowed for elevation up to plus 30 degrees and a depression down to negative 5 degrees. At maximum elevation, the guns could reach targets up to 16,900 meters. The guns fired 140 kilogram shells at a muzzle velocity of 835 meters per second. Each gun came with 75 shells, totaling up to 300 rounds per each gun. Secondary armament consisted of 18 15cm SKL-40 guns. 6 were mounted on single turrets amidships, while the rest were mounted in MPL casemates. All were manually operated and elevated. Most of these guns were mounted at upper deck level, and only 4 of the casemates at the main deck were at main deck level, which kept them high enough in the ship to avoid a common problem with battleships of the period, where heavy seas would render the guns unworkable. According to the historian Aidan Dorson, the arrangement was perhaps the best of the period. These guns fired armor-piercing shells at a rate of 4 to 5 per minute. The ships carried 120 shells per gun, totaling to 2,160 rounds. The guns could be depressed to negative 7 degrees and elevated up to plus 20 degrees, allowing for a maximum range of 13,700 meters. The shells weighed 51 kilograms and were fired at a muzzle velocity of 735 meters per second. The ships also carried 12 88cm SKL-30 quick-firing guns for defense against torpedo boats. And these were mounted individually in casemates and pivot mounts. These guns were supplied between 170 and 215 shells per gun. These guns fired a 7.4 kilogram shells at a muzzle velocity of 590 meters per second. Their rate of fire was approximately 15 shells per minute. The guns could engage targets out to 6,890 meters. The gun mounts were manually operated. The ship's gun armament was rounded out by 12 3.7 centimeter Maxim machine guns. The ships were also armed with 6 45 centimeter torpedo tubes, all in above water swivel mounts. 4 torpedo tubes were mounted on the sides of the ship, another in the bow, and the last in the stern. These weapons were 5.1 meters long and carried a 87.5 kilogram TNT warhead. They could be set at two speeds for different ranges. One at 26 knots, the torpedoes could have a range of 800 meters. At the increased speed of 32 knots, the range was reduced to 500 meters. And as you can see, the torpedoes were getting pretty longer. 5.1 meters is actually like it's 16 feet long, and a normal like today torpedo is like 7.1 centimeters long. So I mean, torpedo technology at this time was advancing pretty quickly, because this torpedo had an 8.7 kilogram warhead, which is quite the pack of explosives at that time, or at least I think it is. Armor. The Kaiser Friedrich III class featured a material known as Krupp armor, a specialized type of steel armor produced by a German company called Krupp. This armor was recognized for its exceptional strength. The Kaiser Friedrich III class were armored with steel produced by Krupp. They were the latest German capital ships to use the old-style narrow belt arrangement. Older compound armor required a significant amount of steel to reduce large caliber shell fire, which meant that little of the ship could be covered with armor, owing to its weight. Krupp's new steel was much stronger, but the design staff did not take advantage of the reduced weight to provide a more comprehensive protection, which would arrive with the subsequent Wells batch class. German names. What a mouthful. They had an armor belt that was 300 millimeters thick in the central portion of the hull at the waterline. It was tapered to 150 millimeters in the forward section and 200 millimeters in the rear, although the belt did not extend fully aft. The lower portion of the belt ranged in thickness from 100 to 180 millimeters. The entire belt was backed with 250 millimeters of teak. The main armored deck was 65 millimeters thick, but the thickness was increased to 75 millimeters aft of the rear main battery barbette, where the belt did not protect the stern. This portion of the deck carved down at the sides to offer a measure of protection against shell hits. The conning tower was protected by armored sides that were 250 millimeters thick, and the roof that was 330 millimeters thick. Each main battery turret had a 50 millimeter thick roof and 250 millimeter thick sides. The 15 centimeter guns mounted in turrets were protected by 150 millimeter thick sides and 70 millimeter thick gun shields. Those encasemates also had 150 millimeters worth of armor protection. Chapter 4: The construction period and the ships of the class. The 5 ships of the Kaiser Friedrich class were built by a combination of government and private shipyards. 3 of the ships, Kaiser Friedrich III, Kaiser Wilhelm de Gross, and Kaiser Karl de Gross, were delayed during construction. Kaiser Friedrich III had to wait for her main battery guns to be completed before entering service. Kaiser Karl der Grosse was damaged by an accidental grounding by the shipyard crew when they were moving the ship from Hamburg to Wilhelmshaven, and a fire at the shipyard slowed work on Kaiser Wilhelm der Grosse. SMS Kaiser Friedrich III, meaning His Majesty's Ship Emperor Frederick III, was the lead ship of the Kaiser Friedrich III class of Pre-Dreadnought battleships. She was laid down at the Kaiserlich Wift in Wilhelmshaven in March 1895, launched in July 1896, and finished in October 1898. SMS Kaiser Wilhelm II, meaning His Majesty's Ship Emperor Wilhelm II, was the second ship of the Kaiser Friedrich III class of pre-dreadnought battleships. She was built at the Imperial Shipyard in Wilhelmshaven. It launched on the 14th of September 1897. The ship was commissioned into the fleet as its flagship on the 13th of February 1900. SMS Kaiser Wilhelm der Grosse, meaning HMS Emperor Wilhelm the Great, was a pre-dreadnought battleship of the Kaiser Friedrich III class, built around the turn of the 20th century. The ship was one of the first battleships built by the German Imperial Navy as part of a program of naval expansion under Kaiser Wilhelm the Second. Kaiser Wilhelm der Grosse was built in Kiel at the German shipyard. She was laid down in January 1898, launched in June 1899, and launched in May 1901. SMS Kaiser Karl der Grosse was brain fart. Named for the Emperor she was named after the Emperor Charlie Magic. Is that how you pronounce it? Kaiser Karl der Grosse was built in Hamburg at the Boehm and Voss shipyard. She was laid down in September 1898 and launched on October 1899. A shipyard strike and an accidental grounding delayed her completion until February 1902. She was therefore the last member of her class to enter service. SMS Kaiser Barbarossa was a ship built by the Imperial Navy. The construction took place at the Schule in Danzig. Kaiser Barbarossa was laid down in August 1898, launched on the 21st of April 1900, and commissioned in June 1901. Okay, that I kind of mumbled that, but I guess it'll work. All the more reason to do better next time, right? Each battle, each try will get better. That's how you get better at something. You struggle with it at first, you fail at first, and then you win the second or third or even eighth times. The key to anything in life is to never give up. Chapter 5: The Great War and Retirement. On entering service, Kaiser Friedrich III became the flagship of the Prince Heinrich, the commander of the first squadron of the Home Fleet. Kaiser Wilhelm II became the flagship cruiser, the fleet commander. The two ships operated together in early 1901 until Kaiser Friedrich III was badly damaged on a grounding accident while cruising the Baltic Sea in April. An investigation revealed several uncharted rocks and faulted the lightship in the area, which was out of position. While she was out of service for repairs, her crew was transferred to Kaiser Wilhelm der Grosse, which had just been completed. Over the course of the next 4 years, the ships of the class operated together in the first squadron, conducting training cruises, fleet maneuvers every August and September, and visits to foreign ports. By 1905, as several new classes of battleships, the Wittelbech, Brich, Weg, and Dutchland classes had either entered service or were approaching completion, the members of the Kaiser Friedrich III class began to be transferred to the Second Fleet, to the Second Squadron. In 1906, Kaiser Wilhelm II was replaced as the flagship by the new battleship Deutschland. The normal peacetime training routine continued for the next several years, interrupted by a reconstruction program in the mid to late 1900s. Kaiser Barbarossa was the first to be rebuilt in 1905, a result of having been decommissioned for repairs to her rudder for damage incurred on a cruise to Spain in 1903. Kaiser Friedrich III was rebuilt in 1907. Kaiser Wilhelm II and Kaiser Wilhelm der Grosse were reconstructed in 1909 and 1910. The work involved cutting down their superstructure to reduce top weight, removing 4 of the 15cm guns and 1 of the torpedo tubes, and moving the 8.8cm guns to the upper deck. Kaiser Karl der Grosse was not modernized, however. Beginning in 1808, the members of the class transitioned out of front-line service. The Dutchland class and the first Dreadnought battleships of the Nassau class have taken their place. Kaiser Karl der Grosse was the first to be moved to the reserve squadron in 1908, followed by Kaiser Barbarossa and Kaiser Friedrich III in 1909, and Kaiser Wilhelm II and Kaiser Wilhelm der Grosse the following year. For the first of their peacetime careers, they spent much of the year out of service, but were reactivated for the annual fleet maneuvers every August and September. For the exercises, they formed 3rd Squadron, with Kaiser Wilhelm II serving as the squadron's flagship. World War I. Following the outbreak of World War I in July 1914, the 5 Kaiser Wilhelm III class ships were reactivated to form the 5th Battle Squadron. The Kaiser Wilhelm II again as the flagship. They served briefly as a coastal defense role in the North Sea before being transferred to the Baltic in September for operations against the Russian Empire. They were slated to carry an amphibious assault force in Windau in late September, but false rumors of British warships having entered the Baltic Sea led to the operation being cancelled. They made a sweep into the northern Baltic Sea in December, but did not encounter any Russian warships. In January 1915, they were moved back to the North Sea for guard duties, but were quickly decommissioned the next month. Their ships were by then thoroughly obsolete and were far too vulnerable to modern weapons, particularly the British submarines that had began operating in the Baltic Sea. In addition, the Navy was facing severe crew shortages and decided that older vessels of limited combat use, like the Kaiser Friedrich III class, could not be maintained in service. On the 5th of March, The ships were dispersed to various ports, had their crews reduced, and were eventually disarmed. Kaiser Wilhelm II was stationed in Wilhelmshaven as a headquarters ship for the commander of the High Seas Fleet, a role she continued to fill after the war. Kaiser Karl der Grosse was used briefly as an engine room training ship before being converted into a prison ship. Kaiser Friedrich III and Kaiser Barbarossa also served as floating prisons in Kiel and Wilhelmshaven, respectively. Kaiser Wilhelm der Grosse became a depot ship before being reallocated to a torpedo target ship in 1916. The guns taken from the ships were used as coastal artillery in the North Frisian and East Frisian Islands in the North Sea and to guard Label in the Baltic. The 5 ships were broken up between 1920 and 1922 after the end of the war to ensure Germany complied with the naval disarmament clauses of the Treaty of Versailles. The bow armament the bow armaments of the Kaiser Friedrich III and Kaiser Wilhelm II are now preserved at the Martelli Historiets Museum in der Braditz in Dresden. Is that how I can't pronounce it. I'll just put it in subtitles. Chapter 6. The End of an Era. After World War I ended in 1918, the Kaiser Friedrich III class battleships were taken apart and sold for scrap. This was part of a treaty that limited the size of the German Navy. It's sad, but all of the ships were scrapped between 1920 and 1923. Even though that they weren't used for very long, these ships were a big step forward for the German Navy. They were the first German battleships to have lots of new technology that later became common in other warships. They showed that Germany was becoming a powerful naval force, and their design influenced how battleships were built for years to come. So even though they are now gone, the Kaiser Friedrich III class battleships were an important part of naval history. That's it for this video. I kind of mashed this video together. I mean, I don't know what it is. I always do better at the beginning of voicing this video and doing worse at the end of this video. It's like I become more rushed and anxious as time goes on when I make these videos, especially when I'm recording or when I just, as a commenter said, I waffle the script. I mean, I read the script. I do read through it to make sure that the information's right. I just don't take the time to memorize the script and familiarize myself with it. But knowing me, even if I do that, I will still waffle it anyway, because of how nervous and pent up my emotions are to get it right, to say the words right, but they end up but I end up not saying the words right anyway. I end up the words. I end up jumbling them up. I literally don't know what I can do to fix this. Because I don't know. And it's probably the main thing that's holding me back in making these videos. It's my ability to say the words right without jumbling them up to the point where they don't make sense. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you learned something. Hit that like button and subscribe for more history videos like this one. I'm gonna start making tank videos now.